Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll tell you what, obviously, I talk to entrepreneurs for a living, and I see all sorts of businesses in all sorts of industries, and thanks to AI, more and more tech companies are popping up every single day, and that's why I love today's guest, because her work is all about making sure that good products are developed and good products come to fruition, and the work that she does greatly assists and makes that possible. Let me introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Megan Maloney. Megan is the dynamic CEO and founder of Maloney and Associates, which is a consulting firm that's all about quality assurance, test automation, and engineering. Megan has a knack for leading large initiatives in crafting QA test strategies that not only speed up time to market, but also boost quality. She's all about building software right the first time. Her journey began, she's got such an interesting backstory I'm excited to hear more about. Her journey began in the military as a developer, but she quickly realized that her true passion was in testing code rather than building it. This passion for catching defects before they hit production led her to build quality assurance teams for several large organizations, and her deep understanding of companies' needs for quality and efficient market entry has helped her develop winning strategies that drive success. Whether you're in the tech space or not, I'm very excited to hear about the way that Megan thinks about things, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Megan Maloney. All right, Megan, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's good to be here.
Yes, I'm very excited to hear the way that you think, because there was a line on your website. We keep it PG here, Megan, but there's a line on your website that you must already know the line that I'm talking about, but it was something along the lines of, you make sure that not crappy software actually hits the market. So we're going to get into that, but before we do, take us beyond the bio. Who is Megan? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Well, as you read, I started in the military, and I was a software analyst and a programmer. And programming is very tedious, and it's not. It wasn't that fun, but I did find that testing the software and breaking it was extremely fun and really rewarding, because I was able to find things that would have been a negative thing for the market, but able to stop and get them fixed. And when I started my career, testing was kind of an afterthought, and it wasn't really something that people did. I remember the developers were like, yeah, we spent 5 minutes in the lab, and I'm like, so I got to change and influence quite a few different organizations and help drive quality, which enabled us to do a lot of big things like digital transformations and upgrades on large banking systems and streamlining our applications. And I started using automation and AI early. So automation has been around for a long time. In the late 90s, automation was up and coming, and we started using it at a bank that I worked at, and it just sped the credit card processing system up and the time to market. So it's kind of something that fell in my lap, but I've really enjoyed watching how software development has changed over the years, and how the mindset has changed from, testing is an afterthought, to, no, we got to get it up front and we got to get it early. So that's kind of how my career took off, and I've been doing it in the capacity of a consultant for 20 plus years. I don't want to say how old I am, but around 20 years plus, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love that overview, Megan, especially because I love the way that we all use words. And in the world of business, we throw words around so frequently, and a lot of them become buzzwords. But one of those that comes out of your world so often is, of course, quality, which is a very subjective term. And I think about it's kind of counterpart in the entrepreneurial world, which is MVP. We talk about a minimum viable product so frequently. And to me, it's such an interesting paradox because we obviously want quality products, but then we also go to market very quickly because we don't want the finished product. We just want to get market validation. We want to get users. We probably want to get revenue. How do you balance those two? And really, on just a linguistic basis, how do you personally define quality? What's good enough to put into the marketplace?
Yeah, that is subjective, but in order to do it the right way, we want to define it up front. So when we're building a strategy for our customers, we ask, what is your threshold for pain? Because not everybody cares about quality equally, right? So if you're in banking, it's a lot more important than if you're behind the scenes trucking industry, for example, where the customer is internal, so the quality could be a little bit less because it's not customer facing. And the funny thing about MVP and Agile is I started using that a long time ago. We've been using Kanban and Agile for 12 to 15 years, and the first time that concept of MVP came to life, it was kind of crazy because you're used to developing whole products, right? And then all of a sudden, like, we want the minimal viable product, but it's hard to just put one screen out that doesn't function, right? So people get a lot creative with that. What is an MVP and how do you define what quality is? And really, I define quality as, I like it to be 0 defects on delivery, but not every organization has that threshold. So if we can get an average of less than 10% of defects going into production and 0 high defects, that's a good quality product to me. If your users can use your application without struggling to figure out, oh, what happens if I do this, or it's not intuitive, that's when you start to have a bad product, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, Megan, we're all about opinions here. It's why we invited you on the show, because we very much value your opinion because it comes from experience, and you've obviously seen so many projects. I love that you called out the fact that you've been using AI for a while. I feel like ChatGPT stole a lot of the AI thunder, and people think that they were the ones that made AI all of a sudden accessible. But of course, it's been running in the background for so long. It's just more accessible to end consumers these days. And I would argue, and I would hypothesize, that it probably means that testing, QA, all of these things are a little bit easier in some ways, but at the same time, there's a lot more junk out there because people like me can be dangerous even when we don't understand code and software and development and the real way to do these things. So what's your take on it? Is it making the world better? Is it making your job easier? Is it making it more difficult? What's your observation?
That's a really interesting thing. So we did an experiment not long ago because everybody's like, oh, it's going to take over our jobs. So we plugged in the requirements for a project, and we asked ChatGPT to tell us how many test cases we would need, what we would need to do, and how to do it. And it came up with literally 95 scenarios on a 4-line requirement. So if we had followed ChatGPT's recommendation, we would have added time to our testing, but we would have received a much lower quality product because it didn't understand the business behind the requirement. It only understood the words. So in AI and ChatGPT, it's not going to replace us just yet because it doesn't understand quite how the requirements are written to translate into a business process. If we get better at that, obviously we would get better at writing the requirements. And that's why it's really important to understand what the goal is and not just trust AI is going to help you, because sometimes more is just more, right? And 95 scenarios sounds like, how could you miss anything? But if we had used that as our testing platform and our testing plan, we would have completely missed the boat.
Yeah, and go ahead, Megan.
and I was just about to say, the way you really get the benefit from AI is when it's in a tool, and it has the built-in learning. So if it's running scripts and running tests, and it finds a defect, the good AI will say, hey, we've noticed that you have a defect here. Maybe we need to do a little bit more testing around there. And so it cues you to go back to that spot, versus where people get into trouble with AI now is, in my opinion, is that they think it's going to do everything for them, and it's not there yet.
Yeah, and it's crazy because, of course, it is developing very quickly, but I'm with you. I don't think it'll ever be... I love this term, actually. It's a term that I've heard more and more recently, Megan, of the last mile, whether it comes to last mile transportation, like the scooters that we see popping up in so many cities, or last mile conversions with regards to sales. What are those ways we can just follow up with our prospects to really get them over the line? I think that AI can plug so much of the earlier gaps, but it's that last mile, that human touch. And you use the word understanding, and I want to go deeper there because listeners know that we have a questionnaire for our guests before you come on the air, and we always ask, what's your zone of genius? Megan, I don't know if you remember what you wrote there, but I love it that you said your superpower is to ask questions that everyone in the group is thinking but is afraid to ask. What does that look like? Because you, like I said, bring so much experience to the table. How do you even make sense of situations, of products, of roadmaps to know what types of questions to ask? And of course, you're very brave enough and daring enough to ask those questions. So I'd love to get inside that side of your head.
Yeah, that is it. It is my superpower, but like I said, it's also my kryptonite because I look at the world and it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray. But a lot of times people put forth ideas. I'll give you the best example of my superpower. We had a problem we were trying to solve with our Agile implementation. And part of the problem we were trying to solve was a bottleneck in between getting the project started over to actually getting them implemented, right? So there was a 4-step process, and it bottlenecked along the way. So the organization hired an external team, ungodly amounts of money, and they worked on this project for 6 months. They came back with a 32-step process to solve a 4-step problem. And I was looking around the room. It was all senior leaders, and everybody was like, okay, this is great. And I'm looking at this, and I said, so we're implementing 32 steps to solve a 4-step problem. And how is this going to help us get faster? And after I said it, everybody was able to voice their opinions, but nobody wants to be the one to say, what? Are you kidding me? We're going from 4 steps to 32. And it's just asking the common sense questions that everybody's thinking, like, what are we thinking with this? How is that going to help us? So it's one of my things that I've learned along the way. If I'm thinking it, I typically wait a few minutes to see if anybody else is going to bring it to the table. And if they don't, I don't know. God gave me this mind that just says you have to ask, because we want to know.
Yeah, I love that. And that's part of the value add, Megan. I think that too few people do that. And that's why you've got the mind of an entrepreneur, because you feel that empowerment. And that's one thing that I always give huge kudos to entrepreneurs for, is that we don't wait for permission. It's by very virtue of us starting our business, is we've decided we have this value to bring to the marketplace, and we're absolutely going to go do that. So I love the fact that that's so ingrained in the way that you operate. I want to switch gears a little bit, because all too frequently when we talk about QA, when we talk about testing, a lot of people think that this is a highly technical field, and I don't have to think about that. It only applies to very technical stuff as far as manufacturing or software development. I love the fact that you work with everything from nonprofits to enterprise HR departments and projects. Talk to us about that depth and breadth of the scope and the variety, and why we should care in most of our industries, probably, when it comes to QA and testing.
Yeah, thank you. In my experience, I'm process oriented. So it's really important to understand what we need to do to build the product. So every industry has its own little rules, their own little niches, their own guidelines. And as a developer, you need to understand that. But as a tester and in QA, you really need to understand how things happen, how to get things done, and understanding business process. And once you understand that, and how the business uses it, because a lot of times what happens, and this is a big trend right now, there's a lot of legacy systems that have to be updated. A lot of governments need to get off their current legacy systems before the technology runs out. And so they're getting all of these tools and using AI to come in and say, oh, you do this with your code and you do this. These systems have been implemented at times for 40 years, and the end user has all kinds of workarounds that they use to get their job done because the technology hasn't gone as fast as they need it to. So they make up whatever they need to do to get it. So when you sit down with the business and you understand exactly what they need to do, and they tell you how they do their job, that's when you really understand what needs to be tested and how to test it. So that piece, that human connection and that human interaction with the business to understand what they're doing, because you've worked in all of us have worked with a computer program that you need it to do something. So you download a report, you import it into another system, and you make up whatever it is you need to do your job. And when you upgrade a system, you want to incorporate that so you're not giving them more problems with an upgrade than what they've already got.
Yeah, and when I hear you talk about processes so much, you've already teased a few processes that obviously you lean on in frameworks that are very popular. I'm going to call Agile out because we hear that term so much, and in your world, obviously it's very prevalent. But in the broader entrepreneurial world, we don't have Agile training. I've never been through Agile training. Obviously, it's second nature to you, Megan. So I'd love to lean on some of your expertise with regards to frameworks like Agile, and maybe some of the other ones that you really use and leverage, not only in the way you organize projects and you do the actual work, but I'm sure it affects the way that you think that we could all benefit from in our own businesses. Walk us through some of those frameworks and tools and strategies that you leverage within there.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is a Kanban board, and what that is it's a work in progress. So, like, even for all the projects that I have to do around my house, I get a little board, and I've got all my wish list projects in one column. That's the to do, and then I've got the projects that are work in progress, and those are things that I'm starting. And you're not supposed to start too many things before you finish. You're supposed to start, do it, finish it, and work it through. But this organization helps you visualize all the things that you need to get done or you want to get done, and it helps you prioritize it. Because if you leave something in the to-do column for a long time and it never seems to make it, you have to start to reevaluate. Is this really something that we're ever going to do? And can we get it off of our list of things that have to be done? So a Kanban board is really helpful in terms of visualizing what you need to do and helping you prioritize what you're really going to do. Now, the Agile boards also are very similar, but they don't take a look at all the projects. They're typically for a separate team. So, for instance, when you have large teams, you normally break them up into typically 6 people, and they each have their own boards, and it will lead up into a Kanban board. And I think that came from Japanese technology, I think I heard. And it really does help organize how you get things done. Personal life and professional life, actually.
Yeah, of course you use Kanban boards throughout your house projects. I love that. I figured it would factor into the way that you see the world, not just business. Talk to us about some of those things business-wise, because Megan, you joke about revealing somewhat a little bit about your age when you talk about your decades of experience as an entrepreneur, but I think we need to celebrate that so much in the world of entrepreneurship, because longevity says that you're doing something right, and with that comes so many business principles and foundations and fundamentals that you've done right along the way. What are some of those ingredients that you've directly applied to your business the way that clearly you assign to your house projects as well?
Oh, that's a little bit trickier. The way I've approached the starting the business, it's kind of something I thought about for a very long time, and just decided, you know what? If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And taking that first step, you can do all the boards and all the metrics and all of the planning, and never take the first step, So having that courage to say, I'm ready to do this myself, and I'm ready to walk through that door. I've been planning this for years. I've been thinking about it for years. It was really exciting and really nerve-wracking. It's hard. It's a hard decision to make, and a lot of people stop short at the door looking out. But I have to say, there's nothing better than driving your own success and being responsible for your own success, and wins and loses, because it's both, right?
Yeah, I love the fact that you call that out, Megan. I know as the host of a business show that a lot of people tune in, and it's easy to hear guests such as yourself talk about, of course, your areas of expertise, and it feels like you've got it all figured out. It feels like business must be easy because you're good at what you do, and you get to appear on podcasts, and you get to, interact with clients all over the place. But the truth is, it is hard, and I so appreciate you said nerve-wracking, and that's exactly where my head was going when you talked about it, especially thinking about your careers, that you've worked in so many different environments. I would imagine that working in the military is very different from being an entrepreneur, but at the same time, I'm sure you picked some things up along the way that you realized, wow, I like this part of my professional career. I like this environment that I worked in, and then some things that you intentionally said, I want to change. What are some examples of those that you picked up along your career that you liked and you kept when it came to starting your own business, or some of the ones that you said, I want to do this entirely differently as an entrepreneur?
So my very first civilian boss, I was just out of the military, and I worked for a title insurance company. And my boss was a former Marine, and he was the most frightening man I've ever met. And I had just come from the military. So this tells you something. Every day this man would tell me he would fire me if I made a mistake. And I said to myself, I will never, ever be this person to anybody ever in the workplace. So one thing that I've taken with me is that in order to be successful, the people that work with me have to be successful. And that means they have to trust me, and they have to believe that I have their back. So for me, it's been about building relationships, defining expectations, level setting those expectations so that we all have the same framework and the same things in mind. So for me, it's always been about the relationships and how you treat people. I will never forget that man. I'm not going to say his name, but I will never forget that feeling. And I remember the first time I ever cried at work, and my coworker's like, don't cry, don't cry. He was listening to me getting yelled at on the floor of this organization, and he's like, don't cry. And I'm just looking at him while I'm getting yelled at. And so I said, I will never be that person. One of the things that I had was a good boss who was empathetic and supportive, and he gave us the confidence to speak our minds, have the debate, come together, and that's one of the things that I think helps make it successful, is if you can have the honest conversations, if you can have the debate about the right way to do something and the best way for everybody, that gets the best results, and people value being heard and that their opinion does matter. I mean, that's been the most important thing, and the best way I've been able to get success in my life is through those experiences.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you shared that story with us, and the fact that you're weaving in people, which is the most important element of business, because here we are having a somewhat technical conversation about business, but the fact that people are so at the heart of what you do, and I know that's part of the way that you see the world is through the lens of staffing and human resources and human capital. It's the hardest thing to get right. And clearly you learn through both your good experiences and your bad experiences, and you take those things with you. Megan, I want to squeeze that in here towards the tail end of the conversation. Where does your mind go and where do your eyes go when it comes to assessing the right talent, the right people, the right time, the right opportunities? How do you make sense of that? Because I've found in 18 years of being an entrepreneur, it's probably the hardest part about business.
For me, it's the most exciting part. And I've had some very fortunate experiences. I'll tell you my favorite hire story is I was able to hire a young man straight out of college. He was the first one in his family to ever go to college. He came to the interview with a stained white wrinkled shirt, and he bombed everything. Every question we asked, I mean, he barely got his name right. And he was so sincere, and he knew that he had messed the interview up. And he's like, I know I'm not doing this very well, but if you guys are willing to take a chance on me, I'll be the best worker you ever had. And you know what? We took a chance on him, and he wasn't the best worker we ever had, but he ended up being very good and a very solid team worker. So for me, I look at attitude more than anything, because if you are the smartest person in the whole world, but you're miserable and we can't work with you, then you're not a good team fit and you're not a good player. So I look for a lot of skills you can build. And in some companies and in some places, you need very technical people. Developers are different. But in testing, if you have an aptitude to try to break things and want to learn and do the work, that's what I look for. I look for the people that want to be there because they want an experience and they want to be part of something. That's what gets me excited when I meet people like that.
Ooh, I love that perspective on it. Megan, I wasn't planning on going here with you in today's conversation, but just knowing our audience worldwide and knowing how many young entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs tune in, we obviously have a relationship with the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. Shout out to all of the students and alumni tuning in from that channel. But one thing that I wonder what people are guiding today's youth and today's students on, because if I was graduating today, I would be asking myself the question of, what should I focus on? What should I learn? And Megan, I'm very much in agreement with you of just have a good attitude because opportunities will present themselves. What would you guide young entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs to really focus on in this time period where, let's face it, you and I both see it from our vantage points, the world is changing fast, technology is changing fast, business is changing fast. What the heck can young people do right now to focus on the right thing?
Attitude is everything. Everything. And I told you, this young man, he had a stain on his shirt. He came in with a wrinkled shirt in a professional setting, but his attitude was amazing. And his desire to learn and to try and to go to the next step in his career and his life, that is what people need to understand. Nothing is going to be handed to you. And people want to work with people who want to learn things. So if you have a good attitude and you have a good desire, people want to be around you. People want to work with you. So while you're building your education and your skill set, never forget that we're humans and the human touch matters, and the personality and your attitude matter more than sometimes your skills. Because if you've got a 5.0 but you can't carry on a conversation, you're going to be limited.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you there, especially because I think it's really powerful the fact that in business, we often lose the human aspect by terms like B2B. So like Megan, your business is B2B, you're working with other businesses, but there's no such thing as a business working with a business. It's always people. So I love how much you emphasize that. You've dropped so many nuggets of knowledge on us today, and I promised you that time would fly by together, but I am going to put you on the spot one last time, and that's with the final question that I ask at the end of every episode, and it's super broad. You can take it in any direction you want. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs, young and old, all different industries of all different stages of their growth journeys, and also knowing that you're one of us as a fellow entrepreneur, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Oh, that is, never give up, because when you have your life is filled with challenges, and every day you're going to be hit with something. Celebrate the small wins, celebrate them like they're huge, and appreciate them. And when you have a setback, take it and learn from it. And if you have to stay in bed for a day, stay in bed, but get up the next day. Keep moving. You know, the best advice I can give to anybody is keep moving, keep going forward, and learn from what worked and what didn't. And if you find something that works, work it more. And if you find something that doesn't work, let it go, and let it go quick. I'm all about fail fast. Fail fast.
I love that advice, Megan. I know how hard it is, especially on the back of an entire conversation, to really summarize so many different things you want to share with people. But in 1,200 episodes, I don't think anyone's quite had that piece of advice that you've offered to our audience. So I'm so appreciative of the way that you show up and how generous you are with sharing your wins, your losses, all the things you've picked up along the way. So Megan, at this point, I'm really excited for people to check out your business. I called it out at the very top of today's episode, how direct your language is. It's so clear on your website how much you love helping the people that you serve and the clients that you get to work with, and how you are that person in the room willing to say the things sometimes that everyone else is thinking but maybe not saying. So Megan, for listeners who want to check out your business and all the great work that you're doing, drop those links on us. Where can listeners find you online?
I am at MaloneyAssociates.net. And you can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn at Megan Maloney, also Maloney and Associates LLC, my LinkedIn page. My social media is kind of private, so I'm not going to share that.
All right. No worries, Megan. I'm the same way. I'm not all that into social media, so I love the fact that we share that in common. Listeners, you already know the drill. We're dropping those links down below in the show notes. No matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode, you can find Megan and her business on LinkedIn, so check out those links down below. Otherwise, Megan, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.